Hello, everybody. It's really nice to be here. It's a, I mean, not so. This topic is not a pleasure, but it's always a pleasure to come here and discuss with you because I think it's incredibly stimulating for us as well. Um, as Juan said today, I'm gonna run a little bit through things we've done throughout the pandemic, but really the main bit of this of my being here, the purpose of being here is really to kind of gather a little bit of ideas together with you, because I mean the topic mis and disinformation is a big one, right? Everybody is aware, everybody is concerned, but I think that the strategies how to approach it is much more. It's very open, and I think there are not it's still a developing field, and we don't have really a lot of things to go by. So I think having a good discussion here, exchanging information, exchanging expertise, exchanging best practices, that would be a real benefit here. I should say I'm giving this presentation, but I'm leaning very heavily on colleagues who are partly online, but also here. So there's Law over there, Law Herold. Then we have Sophie Labé on the line. We have Camelia Inakioyo, and I think Rosa Gonzalez is also on the line. So all of these people really have, they all contribute to this work. So maybe if I could have the first slide, just really quickly, so that we are clear about terminology, because ultimately we are talking always of mis and disinformation, but in a way there are two different things and two different ends of a spectrum. Misinformation I think, is something we are already very familiar with. It's the kind of it's false or misleading understanding of facts. While disinformation is something else it's quite deliberate. It's often done with the intention of harming, of spreading information, of sowing distrust. During the pandemic, we also saw that, right? There were bot networks that spread information also to kind of unsettle people, unsettle societies. So we are talking, in a way, always about both misinformation and disinformation. But I think depending on where we are coming from, I think that the strategy will have to be different. So can I have the next slide, please? So these are, I think, a few things that I guess we are all very much in agreement. We know that spreading of misinformation has a large public health impact. I mean, we knew that during the pandemic, but it's not the first time, right? I mean, we all remember the MMR vaccines. We remember debate about HPV vaccines. So this is really not the first time we are dealing with this, right? Misinformation also undermines trust in medicines, and that means it can limit uptake of life-saving medicines or vaccines. But you could also argue it's the other way, right? Sometimes it also promotes uptake of medicines that are completely unproven. Just think about the ivermectin discussion during the pandemic, right? Where suddenly I think a veterinary medicine was touted as the big cure of COVID-19. COVID-19 has shown us that social media, of course, plays a huge role. They are the quick exchange means this can be amplified. There's information everywhere. The WHO has done a lot of work in looking at the infodemic, how to kind of also trace how information is shared, how it spreads, and some of the learnings from there. And one thing I've already mentioned is the polarization of the public debate that the mis and disinformation has created, and I think we continue to see this. And therefore, I think we all come to the conclusion it is critical that we address confusing or misleading information, because I think we can't just stand by and don't do anything, right? So if I may have the next slide. Here, I wanted to share a little bit of experience during the pandemic, and because we have seen some examples of how misinformation spreads, where that I think are quite were instrumental and have also really helped us shape our understanding of this. So we had an example of in one of our press briefings, Marco Cavalieri was asked about booster shots. And in that press briefing, he said something along the lines that when you give repeated booster shots at some stage, the immune response is no longer quite so good. And let me just, because I want to quote this, then a journalist was there, and this was interesting, was a Bloomberg journalist, and she was, I think it was the first time she was attending one of our press conferences. The normal journalist wasn't there, so they put this person who hasn't really health experience on that beat. This was what came out. She wrote then, European regulators warned that frequent COVID-19 booster shots could adversely affect the immune system. As a very liberal interpretation of what was said. Now, this really spread, to be honest, that spread like wildfire. So, of course, we got in touch with Bloomberg. You need to retract this. I mean, first we had fairly protracted conversations with the journalists. They retracted, but in the meantime, others had picked up on that and said, "Oh, what have you missed?" EMA warns that there is a problem with the immune system. So, suddenly, all the mass media was reporting about this. Okay, we managed for Bloomberg to retract it. Then others also came in and tried to explain what had happened. But in the meantime, this thing was out. It was like a virus that was now out and that was circulating. And in fact, it's still circulating. It's still every now and then it comes back. I mean, it comes back regularly, it comes back after weeks, after months, but it's out there now. And I think it was a real a teaching moment for us that we had this experience that suddenly a piece of information that you give in good faith really becomes this. So I think it kind of really shaped also our understanding and our sensitivity to this to this problem. So if I may have the next slide. This is actually what we are looking now into going forward. So we want to really use the learnings from the pandemic, but also the learnings we have from other, from our previous experience often with vaccines, but also with other medicines, and really look into building up a more concrete framework, which ultimately will be where we have a lot of emphasis on monitoring, because in the end we need to know what is being said. So what are some of the main issues? Where do they come from? We need to do more social listening, media monitoring. I think where we need to get better, and we need to expand our expertise and capacities, data analytics on misinformation. Because right now we are very lucky, we can kind of still work together with other organizations, but we already see that some of them are less interested in health issues, right? I mean, because mis and disinformation is not only something that affects health, it affects all kinds of things. So some of the partner organizations that really offered good input during the COVID-19 crisis, they're now looking at other areas. They're looking, say, at the situation in Ukraine, in Russia. So the capacity of some of these actors for health information is shrinking. We need to also move in and see what we can do. And then I think we need to carry on working on how we identify concerns, and so that we can actually provide a mapping of concerns, like Priya just told us. We can also follow how concerns develop, etc. Then maybe I come to the actions last, because to be honest, I think the monitoring is pretty clear. We know more or less what we need to do. Outreach is the other thing. So where we really want to work and collaborate with others in the field, because everybody is now getting expertise, experience, and we need to make sure that we bring it together, that we are not going, that none of us starts to reinvent the wheel, because the wheels are not going so round yet, right? So we kind of need to really look together with other organizations, with organizations like yours, with players like WHO, etc. So we really need to see how we build up our expertise, but also how can we co-create strategies and actions, so that we are not only coming up with our own little pilots, but really see how we can actually do this together, have joint campaigns, see how we can amplify each other's campaigns, but also, I mean, language always a big issue for us because, right now our capacity is to deliver in English. We need to reach out more. We need to make sure that we actually get to the citizens in the member states in the languages. And then the middle pillar is the actions. So we know during the pandemic, we set up a number of principles. So we know we need to be as proactive as we can. We need to kind of do as much pre-bunking as we can. We need to reach the public. So we already talked about it, have various ways of engaging. We need to communicate the science behind decisions. Maybe what Priya says, we also need to communicate the people behind the decisions to explain the systems and how this is going. We need to be transparent, even though sometimes the transparency transparency needs to be contextualized, but we need to be transparent. We need to engage. And then we also thought maybe we need to look at health media literacy. There might be a way for us to help understand people how to approach stories that they see on social media. Are there ways that we can also help build up that resilience so that people kind of understand better what it is they're looking at? Then, and that brings me actually to what I thought would be this discussion, but maybe this is also a discussion that we can take up again. Actually, how can we work together here in this group? So I was really interested to hear from you as well, whether you have any experience with tackling or mis or disinformation in your organization, and what this experience is, how you approach it. Do you have a strategy for addressing mis or disinformation? Do you have any ideas about what you consider best practice examples for successful tactics for addressing mis or disinformation? And then also, finally, what role would you see in this work, and how could we work together at EMA?